Or
Can you hear background noise from me, by the way?
I can a little bit, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's because I'm in Department W, but I'll
Yeah.
make sure I'm muted when you're
Well, that's
when
oh
you hear.
yes, you're in one of the booths. Sorry, I've never been able
Yes,
to
I
get there.
am.
Obviously, don't go in early enough in the morning.
I'm very lucky to get one today, actually. Hello, everyone. I can see people joining. Welcome. Gavin and I
Um,
were just discussing the office that I'm based in today, which is a very nice office, actually. It's just finding spots to work in.
oh,
So,
tremendous. Coffee on tap.
yes, it's very nice. So, lucky to have it.
I had a particularly nice beef chili in that location. Lunch
Oh,
yesterday. I met Sam for lunch.
oh, nice. It'd be nice to, yeah, I see her around here occasionally. Usually on a Friday, she's in.
Um,
So, welcome everyone. I can see people joining us slowly ticking in. Um, Names coming through. So, welcome. Just to check our functionality, we always just get people to let us know where you're joining us from in either the chat or the Q&A function, just while we wait for people to come on in. And then it's also nice to hear where you are in the world. Make us feel very jealous in when we're in rainy London. Although we always have people that are also neighbouring us somewhere in the UK where it's also cold and wet.
we see, I like the rain. I'm Irish. I don't trust
Oh,
the sun.
well, Renee's in Jamaica, so that's ultimately made us feel bad already. And
That would be
Panama,
nice to see.
welcome.
My sister-in-law was actually born in Jamaica because her parents were there working there at the time, and she moved back to the UK to start school when she was 5. So she's got a lot of early childhood memories of growing up in Jamaica. Another
Oh, Lisa's
very
also
London.
in London. Oh, so there's
Yeah.
always someone that's with us
Right, so we've
that
got
also feels bad.
Jamaica, London, Kenya, Mumbai, uh, Argentina, Seattle. I think we've got Wow, I think we've got all the continents already, apart from Antarctica. Are any penguins in the audience? Oh, well, close, close.
That would be nice. Cape
I'd
Town.
love to teach a penguin. It'd be great for our diversity scores. No other LLM program would be able to boast that.
If only we had a penguin.
In Shrewsbury from Belfast. Another, depending on how you choose to take it, another expat or escapee. We tend to be one or the other.
Oh, it's always really nice to see because you get all the different time zones as well. So, good
Uh,
morning and good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are.
and, well done if you've joined us in the middle of the night, wherever you are.
Yes. Okay, fabulous. We've got quite a few of us here. So we'll get started with the introductions to rather than wait any longer. So just to say a big welcome to you all from wherever you are in the world. My name is Charlotte Burton. You might have seen me on some previous webinars before that we host as part of the CCLS Discovery Series. My role is to be the marketing manager for the Centre for Commercial Law Studies. So my job is to provide lots of nice opportunities for you to find out a bit more about what it's like studying at CCLS and help in your decision making. And particularly at this time of year, a lot of you will already have had offers to come and study with us. So this is a nice opportunity to find a bit more about the programme. So today we've got Gavin Sutter here as part of a programme specific webinar about our technology, media and telecommunications law program that we have here, affectionately known as TMT, so we don't have to keep repeating that over and over again. And he'll run through that with you. Before we get started, before I hand over to Gavin, just a bit of kind of housekeeping on how we run the sessions. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A function as we go along. If there's anything that's very specific to you, I may answer that during the presentation that Gavin runs through so that we can save time for the end for more generic questions. However, if there is a question that that comes in that is more generic, I might save that to the end. So if you have asked a question and I haven't answered it straight away, I will just note it to say that we might answer it live instead, and then we'll save that for the Q&A that we always have at the end. So you have a nice presentation and then time to ask lots of questions. We will be here until 1 o'clock UK time, or until the questions dry up. So please feel free to use the opportunity while you have us to ask as many questions as you would like. Okay, so Gavin, I guess I'll pass over to you. I think I've done everything I needed to say.
Pull up my slides, share screen button. Wonderful things, these sort of, this Zoom business. Share screen, and this. There we go. That's what we need. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this webinar. As Charlotte said, over the next hour or so, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about CCLS, about our LLM program more generally. I'll say a little bit about TMT, and then we'll have time for some questions at the end. Now, CCLS is located at our facility here on Lincoln's Inn Fields, close to, for those of you familiar with the Tube network, we're close to Holborn, the Central Line. If you're a fan of opera, we're about 10 minutes walking distance from the garden, the Covent Garden Royal Opera House, which is wonderful. My wife can give you great tips on getting cheap tickets for the best of opera, if that's of interest when you're with us. No, we like to boast that we're in the heart of legal London. To give you an idea of exactly where we're located, if you come out of that front door, you can see in the picture, and turn left and wiggle a little bit to the side and go north a little bit northeast, you will very quickly hit Gray's Inn on Gray's Inn Road, and that's where Charles Dickens was a clerk of court before when he started his writing career. It's where he well, basically, I think anything you see in Dickens where lawyers are parodied, that's Dickens getting his own back, and some of the lawyers he maybe didn't like so much. Now, across the way from us, on the other side of Lincoln's Inn Fields, is Lincoln's Inn, one of the inns of court, as well as Gray's. And Lincoln's Inn includes within it the Grand Hall where the Court of Chancery was once held, which is where the fictional case Jarndyce and Jarndyce in Bleak House that Dickens wrote about would have been held where it real in those days. A few minutes in another direction is Middle Temple, one of the other inns of court. And just to the south of us, just past one of the opposition's campuses, and I won't mention them, is the Royal Courts of Justice on the Strand. Now, the Royal Courts are 5 minutes walk from our classroom. And to give you an idea of how significant that building is, that's where the Oscar Wilde libel trial happened. That's where, certainly in the area I teach in media law, virtually every case of significance, including one that was an enormous change, the Naomi Campbell case against the Daily Mirror, which revolutionized our privacy law in England. Those all happened in those courtrooms, and often the cases you will be learning about happened 5 minutes away from where you will be learning them with us. And sometimes we end up in a position where cases that are going to change everything, that are hugely significant, are going on as we teach in this building. So that's what we mean when we're in the heart of legal London. We really are right where it all happens. Our near neighbours are Farrers on the left of this photograph, one of the significant law firms, and to the right, just behind us, that you can't quite see here, is Michon de Rea. So that's how heart of illegal London we really are. Now, in terms of faculty, I mean, I was watching and seeing where everybody is. I think I managed to spot 6 of 7 continents. Unless we can recruit some penguins, I don't think we're going to get students from Antarctica. And that is also reflected in our faculty. At CCLS, amongst our staff of full-time academics, it's about 50 of us, I think now, We have people literally from 6 continents across the world teaching, which brings a huge range of international knowledge and expertise. So, although we are a real center of expertise in English law, we're also a center of expertise in lots of different laws all over the world. And comparative law is a big part of our program as a result of that. Our teaching at CCLS is very proudly based on and led by our research. And I mean, there's a fair chance that on many of the areas that you will study in CCLS, your recommended reading will have been written by the person teaching you. So, we're very proud again of how much we have published and continue to publish in the area. And I don't want to say too much about my own publications here because I'm very aware I've got a book deadline for 2026 on the issue of open justice and the relationship between the media and the court system, which is something that I teach a lot about and I'm very passionate about. So really, our staff are very much the people leading the way in their fields. A lot of the research we have done over the years has developed the law, taken it forward. So Chris Reed, so apologies for the siren. I live next door to the Royal London Hospital. I'm in my home office today, so if you hear a siren, that's what it is. But Chris Reed, the world's first that we know of professor in electronic commerce law, uh, was involved in doing all sorts of things. He very early on in his legal career was a significant expert witness for the committee in Parliament who were drafting the Computer Misuse Act 1990, which is the bedrock of a lot of modern computer crime law in this jurisdiction. So we have a big influence. I was involved with the Scottish government when they were developing their new Defamation Act in 2021. So CCLS prides itself not only on being academics what have published lots of stuff living in our ivory towers. We like to get our hands dirty and get out there and be involved in the development of the law day to day. A number of our staff have consultancies with law firms, have been practitioners. One of our sort of get regular guests for and doing bits and pieces of teaching part time for many years. What is Was a partner in Linklaters in Clifford Chance, and Christopher Millard is his name. And he liked it so much that when he retired, he came to work for us full time in academia and brought with him several £1 million that Microsoft very kindly gave us to set up the Cloud Legal Project, which is really cutting edge research in cloud computing and the importance of that. So that's the kind of people we're dealing with here. We've got a really great location, which we're very happy about. One of the great things about being so close to so many different parts of legal London is that we very often get people very happy to drop in and do events with us and be guests. Somebody I have brought in the past had been Sir Mark Warby, who established a few years ago the Media and Communications list in what is now the King's Bench division of the High Court and is now an appeal court judge. So we're well connected, and it's a really nice academic community interconnected with practice to be involved in. I've stayed around for 25 years as of last Thursday. So, it has a lot to recommend it. Not necessarily me particularly, but so that's who we are. That's what we do. We have a lot of connections. There are a lot of opportunities for students to get involved with the legal community as well, both in terms of uh, careers, events, and all sorts that practitioners will come and speak at, but also through our pro bono legal clinics that exist in the School of Law. We have the Legal Advice Centre. There's the Q Legal project, which is a wonderful thing. I'm very excited about that because my Technology, Media, Telecoms Law Institute that I had is one of the clients of Q Legal, and Q Legal has a student project where they provide us with exciting and really professional little podcasts where they talk about cutting edge issues in TMT law. And you'll be able to, if you Google, the name of the podcast is Yours Lawfully. So if you look that up online, wherever you get podcasts, you'll see that and be able to see one of the things they do. The other thing a lot of these students do is they work in advice with startups and so on, and they can actually work on Q Legal as part of their LLM. A number of those students have even gone on to work professionally with some of the startup uh, entities after they've finished it. We've also got quite a significant PhD community. We've got over 120 students, real specialists spending 3 to 4 years really getting into uh, very specific niches in law and publishing that and going on to academic careers and, of course, careers elsewise. PhDs nowadays are most commonly seen as a route into academia, but many of our PhD students end up in some very influential legal positions in practice as well, and in the private sector. We don't only teach in London. Our London programs are, you can see again, our lovely Lincoln's Inn Fields building. We also do a bit of teaching on some of our programs at our Mile End campus, which is, of course, sexy, fashionable East London. And we've got lovely facilities there, including a wonderful new library with beautiful facilities that I absolutely encourage you to check out if you've got a chance. We also do some of our LLM programs in Paris, which is lovely. I have the particular hardship of having to go to Paris for a couple of nights at a time, a few times a year. And I do it for the team, but it's a great program too. We have a joint program with universities in Singapore. Our Paris program also has a stream that works jointly with the Sorbonne. And as well as this, I actually teach LLM students all over the world on our distance learning program, which sometimes means I'm trying to find a slot in the day where I can run a live tutorial discussion and best facilitate students who are 12 hours apart in their time. So that's also a lot of fun. So that's what we're doing as well as the LLM at CCLS. Now, we are, in terms of the LLM itself, it's one of the largest LLM programs in the world. We can say that with certainty. So far as we know, we believe we are actually the biggest LLM program globally. We certainly are the biggest program by some considerable distance in the UK. And what this does is it allows us to offer a very significant range of options. We have somewhere in the region of 180 modules available across 20 specialist programs. So when you apply for your particular LLM specialism, you're not applying to be told, right, you want to do TMT, so you're going to do part A, part B, part C, and then you get your degree. You have a very significant range of options to choose within those specialisms, and you can do something that's really interesting and tailored to you. We'll come back to that in a bit. Now, it's a genuinely very, very international cohort. We have about 1,000 students, 850 of those, so about 85% of our students will be from outside the UK. So in your classroom, you will have several continents represented. In fact, not so many years ago, I had one class where I had somewhere in, it's quite a large class at the time, and I had somewhere in the region of 60 different legal jurisdictions in the room represented by the student body. And the joy of that is when I say, well, here's the law in England, and lots of people can put their hand up and say, but we do it differently. And you know what? What you do is rubbish. What we do is so much better an idea. And quite often I say, oh, yes, yes, it is. But what can you do? And, and that's a really helpful learning environment, learning alongside such an international cohort, making friends all over the world, which is great for after your LLM. We'll come back to that. But it really enriches the learning environment that we have. You can also then, because of the range of modules we offer, as well as doing some traditional subjects and important ideas, advanced competition law or contract law or whatever you choose, we have a lot of really unique and unusual cutting edge modules. So we're the only LLM program that we know of at all that offers animal law. That's offered jointly on both intellectual property and on the TMT programs. And that deals with rules around fair treatment of animals in the farming industry, in the fashion clothing production from animal hide industry, but also animals in the movie business. If you're going to make a movie and you want to have a cat in it, well, how do you treat that cat? It's a bit like when you have a movie and you've got children in it because they're under 18, they're not adults. They can't work so many hours. They've got to be properly put through their education. That's why twins are very popular, identical twins in the movie business, because you can switch them out for each other and double your filming day. It's the same with cats, dogs, other animals, all sorts of laws about making sure those animals are not cruelly treated, that when they do little tricks for the camera, it's because they've been trained humanely. All like fascinating stuff. We have interactive entertainment law. So my colleague, Gaetano Demita, wonderful, wonderful guy, Sicilian, lovely guy. I feel very old because I taught him, I supervised his LLM dissertation in 2004. Then he did a PhD with us, and now he is a much valued colleague. And he developed the field of interactive entertainment law at CCLS, which is basically the all-around video games. One of the biggest sectors in the entire entertainment industry. And for many years, it wasn't much taken seriously in academia. But Gaetano's developed this, and he talks about, obviously, intellectual property, about conditions in the industry, about ownership of characters and franchises, and also about things like, can you have violent games? How do we stop games that are really appropriate for adults, not so much for children? How do we legally deal with that to make sure they're audience appropriate? Fascinating stuff. He runs an annual conference we have on this, where game developers, people from the industry, lawyers, top level people all over the world come every year, and it's a fantastic thing. We're also, as well, we were the first LLM in the world to offer fashion, in the UK certainly, to offer fashion law, which is a very important part of that. Again, my colleague Joanna Gibson, who teaches the animal law and the film law, looking at the business of the movie business and the law around it. There's one of those modules where you can actually work in a group and make a little movie and learn about the legalities of the movie business by putting your pitch together for funding and making your movie and considering all the contractual implications, which is tremendous fun. I'm going to this year's pitch meeting with Joanna on Friday evening for that. So, it's really, not only are the people who teach you in this program the cutting edge, who are developing this stuff, but you're learning the cutting edge. In fact, I can throw this out. This isn't mentioned on the slides because it's very new. Next year, for the first time, Joanna and I will be leading a module on law of the theatre. So, where are the two world centres of theatre, at least in the English language? London and New York. Broadway. London's a serious theatre because we had Shakespeare. And we're going to, in that module, we'll be looking at the historical development of legal regulation of the theatre and intellectual property issues and all sorts. Things like, if you're going to make a jukebox musical or the musical of the movie, what are the legal rights in that? How do you do that? And what comes out of that that's new, that is separate protection? Really fun stuff. So with this range of choice, you've got a lot of opportunity to really develop something on your LLM that is uniquely you, beyond the title of the specialism, something that really gives you something that represents you and your interests. Some specialisms do have core modules, others don't. Certainly in TMT, there are no modules you have to do. The whole thing you can choose yourself. Now, there are two routes through the dissertation. Number one is the top program, and that's where you do all 180 credits through top modules in a classroom where somebody like me, or possibly younger and more attractive, gets up and says, "Here's some stuff. Let's learn about stuff. Isn't that fun?" Uh, a number of programs, including IP and TMT, my own, have what we call an elective dissertation. In other words, you can choose to do a dissertation, but you don't have to. And that option is there for you. And that may be if you want to go into legal practice as an IP lawyer, as a TMT lawyer, you might feel it's more useful to you to do some more top subjects. On the other hand, if you're thinking, well, there's something I'm really interested in that's not quite covered in depth in one modules because it's a very focused issue, or it's something that cuts across several modules. I'm really interested in this. I'm passionate about it. I want to write about it. Then that might be where you would choose a dissertation, particularly if you're considering doing a PhD later on. Queen Mary and most universities, if you apply for a PhD, they like to see you've done this sort of long bit of writing before, as a way of determining whether you're a good candidate for PhD. So bear that in mind. The other reason it's helpful if you're considering a PhD is it lets you have a little bit of a taster as to what it's like to work independently and decide whether or not that's for you. Now, when you're doing one of these programs, as with all programs, you have to do at least 120 credits from your particular specialism. So if it's TMT, you choose 120 of those credits must be from TMT. Whether that's modules that are only TMT or modules that are shared with other ones. And there's a lot of that. You could very easily do half a dozen different really interesting LLMs within TMT without going outside those boundaries. But sometimes, of course, there are subjects you think, well, that's interesting too. And that would add a particular something else to the breadth of the LLM that I've envisioned that's right for me. Or I just fancy doing music blog because it's a bit different, or something like that. And you can do that. You can do up to a third. If you're doing a fully taught program, you can do up to 60 credits from outside your specialism. So the specialism doesn't really box you in much at all. You still get left with a lot of choice. And of course, if it's the way you feel, if that's what suits you, you can choose to do a general LLM in law, which isn't tied to any specialism, and you can do anything you want at that point. Now, we would discourage you. There are some limitations. We tend to encourage you to balance a certain number of credits across the 3 parts of the year. So you're not trying to do everything all at once in one semester. We also wouldn't be, keen on having you doing 2 modules where the lectures happen at the same time. But there's a lot of freedom to pick that. Now, if you choose a specialism which requires a dissertation, or you choose to do a dissertation, the dissertation is 30 credits, and it must be something that connects with your specialist topic. Now that's not hard to find. It's very straightforward to find something really interesting that really fires your imagination within any specialism. It's 10,000 words long. It involves a few months' work. Usually, we would ask you to submit your title, or a rough title. It doesn't tie you in, but a rough title in November. You get your supervisor in January, and then submission would generally be August. So it's a few months' work, it's independent work, and it gives you a chance to do that. In one of these programs, of your 150 credit top modules, if you're doing a dissertation, you still have to have at least 90 credits from your modules, whether that's IP specialism or TMT or whichever specialism it is you've taken. You can still have up to 60 credits on other specialisms from outside your own. Just those 60 credits can't include your dissertation. And a number of programs, as I mentioned, IP, TMT being two, you can choose to do a dissertation. And if you do, the numbers would add up this way, but you don't necessarily have to. Some programs, insurance law being one, it is compulsory. Now, the dissertation itself, as I've mentioned, it is a chance to look at something that you can really get your teeth into. Typically, what happens with a dissertation is a student comes to you after class and says, you mentioned this issue in passing. That's really interesting because there's just so much going on there that we get into depth and analyze. And usually I would say there really is. Unfortunately, within a 30 credit course or a 15 credit course, we've only got so much time and lots of things we have to cover. But if you're really interested in that specific aspect, that's when having a dissertation to explore that becomes an option. Or sometimes students will say, I'm interested in this, and this is interesting because back in my country, things are still developing. It's quite new. We're looking at changing the law in this area, and that's a great one to explore what different jurisdictions have done, what English law has done, or what European law has done, and compare that to what you see as the gap, the lacuna in your home law, and say, well, maybe we could do what they've done, but no, I'm not sure about that. I think maybe we should do something else. It gives you that chance to do something independent, to write, to work on your own. And, as long as you don't follow a stream where it says you've got to do a dissertation, you have the choice whether to do that or not. But if you're thinking of a PhD, it's a good idea, partly to be able to say on your application, well, I have done some independent research before, and this is what it is. And sometimes a lot of students who do go on to do a PhD, particularly with us, it's something that actually spins out of their dissertation that they just find so fascinating. They want to write 100,000 words about it. But it also gives you a chance to see whether that might be for you. If you spend 8 weeks writing a dissertation and you hate it, then you know that PhD maybe isn't going to be your bag. So it's a useful exercise to experience that challenge for yourself and decide whether that's going to be part of your future or not. So this is how we break the law down, the year down on the LLM. So semester one, we start in October. It runs up to December when we have the winter break over the Christmas period. And that's in 2 blocks. So we've got 5 weeks we've got 2 weeks from the end of September of induction. Then we have 5 weeks of actual term where we do modules. And then we've got a week's gap in between, what we call a reading week, where you've got time to go and deal with issues of assessment and prep things and sort your books out for the next bit and all that sort of thing. And then we come back for another 5 weeks from the middle of November onwards, and that's the second block. We do something similar in the second semester, but we do the same thing in the second semester. There are 2 weeks of assessment at the start of January, and then from late January into late February, we have 5 weeks. We're just coming to the end of week 5 of this year's second semester now. And then we have a reading week, and then we have another 5 weeks that take us up to the spring equinox or Easter or whichever festival that particular period by. And then we have another shorter 5 week block as semester 3. Technically, I think these should be called trimesters now, but in academia, old habits die hard, and we can have 3 semesters if we want. I think that's a sort of academic thought experiment. Like having three sides on an LP. If you're all too young to know what an LP was, I'm sure. A vinyl record, a long player, and oh, never mind. So you can see where if you think about those three blocks, it gives you a lot of space to be creative, to play around, to decide what exactly it is you want to do in your program. So you have 15 credit modules run for 5 weeks, 30 credit modules run for the full semester, all 10 weeks, and you have a little break in the middle of them. And this gives you a lot of different opportunities. Any of you who misspent a large part of your youth, as I did, playing Warhammer and or wargaming of some sort and coming up with points for your armies with all the little men, will understand intuitively this idea of choosing the right number of modules to add up to the 180 credits. If you were less dull than that, less dull than me, uh, don't worry, it's not complicated. But it gives you a lot of freedom. You can choose to do the longer 30 credit courses if you want. Uh, in theory, in one semester, you could do 60 credits by doing 4 elective modules across that semester. And there are recommendations, and we'll give you all sorts of guidelines about what we think is an appropriate level of credits to be doing across each of the semesters, bearing in mind that if you do choose to do a dissertation, you'll be doing that work alongside your top modules in the second semester. So you might make it slightly fewer of those than in the first semester, that sort of thing. All right. That takes us on then to, oh, I think this is the slide I want. So this, just to give you a little bit of an idea about the kind of range of options there are. This slide refers to the TMT LLM, which is the best LLM because it's mine. Now, we could start with technology. I'll get 2 examples from the many in technology down the left here. So top right-hand corner, the little shopping cart on the computer keyboard. E-commerce. I love e-commerce, partly because I'm very lazy about going to the shops and it's cheaper to buy things online, but also in a big part because e-commerce got me my job. The first 12 months that I was at CCLS in 1999 was came about because my job was originally funded, in fact, for the first 3 years by the e-commerce ECLIP, Electronic Commerce Legal Issues Platform. And it was a European Commission funded research project with 6 university partners across Europe. And I got to travel and do all sorts of interesting things as part of that. And we wrote about uh, and this is like 25 years ago, we were doing research on e-payment systems at a time when everybody thought that electronic cash and electronic payments would be some kind of weird thing in the future. And if people paid online at all, they put their credit card details into Amazon or they posted a check to somebody on eBay. Very, very different world now where PayPal and Bitcoin and a lot of these things we were looking at in the very early days and thinking about the legalities even then are now commonplace. Issues about contracting online and so on. And even though e-commerce is now something we've had for about 30 years, I suppose, it's still complicated. It's still creating new and challenging issues and will continue to do so. And, we're still on top of that. That's a big part of the elements in our cloud legal research going on, funded by the Microsoft millions. Another aspect of the internet is, of course, sadly, that there's some nasty stuff on there. Now, I started my career as a media lawyer, really writing about the issues involved in censoring the internet, in dealing with particularly illegal forms of pornography and violence and other kinds of stuff online. And that's something that the law has tried to grapple with in many ways over the last 30 years. And particularly now, we're really seeing huge developments there with the Digital Services Act in Europe, with the Online Safety Act in the UK. And that's changing and developing and going forwards. That's something we do on TMT. Um, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner here, you've got the uh, Post Office Tower, which I gather is now being sold by British Telecom to become a restaurant and a hotel. There we are. Uh, but representing telecommunications, now there was a time when telecommunications in the UK were provided by a government monopoly called GPO telephones. My dad worked for them from he was 16 back in the 60s, worked for them for years. And by the time he left, they were British Telecom and they were part of a much bigger free market, a private market as a privatized entity. Mobile telephones have come along, endless issues involved in regulating and dealing with that. And over the last 25 plus years, Ian Walden, former director of CCLS and one of our long-term TMT people, has been very heavily involved in dealing with these issues. And that's a fascinating area. A number of our students who have done the LLM and done telecoms law have gone on to work in the telecoms field with the telecoms regulators in their home countries, as well as in private practices, lawyers in that area. Uh, and then we get to the really fun stuff. If you look at the top right-hand corner, some of you will recognize Colleen Rooney and Rebecca Vardy from the celebrated Wagatha Christie libel trial. That's the kind of fun stuff I get to talk about because defamation is one of my specialisms. Then we get into areas that I cross over with Joanna Gibson, the movies, the fashion business, all sorts of fun stuff. But I was actually on BBC Radio Scotland last month on the Good Morning Scotland programme talking about this very early version of Mickey Mouse, which through some quirk in American copyright law is now public domain, but the rest of Mickey Mouse isn't. So how do you balance what you can and can't use as not Disney and make money with without Disney's lawyers coming after you? And that's going to become more and more interesting as Donald Duck and Goofy and other aspects of the Disney empire start to come out of copyright and all these big media franchise empires that have been created over the latter half of the 20th century in particular. What happens when the limits of intellectual property protection start to come up there? Fascinating area of law. And all of these things are encompassed within TMT. So if you wanted to be a very traditional cyber lawyer, you could do e-commerce contracts and you could do telecoms and you could do the module that I teach with Julia Hornlow, where we look at the distinction between traditional media regulation and cyber media regulation and what the new problems are and how we overcome those. You could do Julia's work, Julia's modules on jurisdiction, all of that. If you wanted to do some credits outside your specialism, there is a module you can do on dispute resolution online, which creates another interesting wrinkle. Or you might decide, well, actually, do you know what? I want to do something with a more traditional media focus. So you could do my modules on media regulation, on reputation management, where we'll talk about Wagatha Christie and privacy law and so on. There are all sorts of routes through that. And that's just one specialism. All the specialisms have interesting routes and nuances. So you're not boxing yourself in by choosing a specialism. You've still got real opportunities. Now, in terms of what we need from you to let you in, our baseline is an upper second class honours degree in law, what we call a 2-1 in the UK, or the equivalent. Alternatively, we do consider, in some cases, on a case-by-case basis, if your program wasn't necessarily pure law, but it has a very substantial law content to where we're satisfied that it's fair to you to put you in a postgraduate law environment, we can do that. Sometimes we take people with the 2-2. if that's offset by other things. So if you got a 2-2 20 years ago and you have been working in intellectual property law for 20 years, you're a real expert in the field, we would very happily say, come in and do our LLM in intellectual property law. So, there are options. If anybody is considering doing one of the MSc programs, we do often let people onto that. The MSc in intellectual property, for example, will take students without an undergraduate law background. And what we then build into that program is a fairly intensive pre-sessional run of a couple of weeks where we bring you up to speed as lawyers. So you can go on and do that. And then a lot of those students will go on to become patent clerks and work variously in the industry. You'll find all the entry requirements on our program page, and our lovely admissions team with Charlotte and the rest of her team will be very happy to engage with you and advise you against your qualifications and what programs might be suitable for you. Now, because we, not all of us, as I've mentioned, we're a very international faculty, but we are primarily in an English language speaking jurisdiction. Some of us are English language near monoglots, sadly. And so we do teach in English as the learning medium. Now, for that reason, we do ask that you are familiar with the language, because otherwise you're going to struggle with the program. And there needs to be some measure. The government in the UK mandate, and particularly as part of student visas, that you do qualify for an English language test. And generally that means IELTS. And we've got the scores on the screen here. Again, admissions can advise you on that. But the general rule is your IELTS, or if you were taught in specific countries, particularly if you did your undergraduate degree in the UK, that's accepted, because clearly you were taught in English in the UK. There have been some changes over the years. I know with India, you now need to have an IELTS qualification. That's a government qualification that applies to all UK universities for students coming on a Tier 4 visa from India. But again, there's a URL on the slide that will give you the full information on that. And I know Charlotte will make these slides available to you. And you can look that up in due course. The cost. I'm afraid we do have to charge money for this. Much as I would love to live in a world where you would get in purely on merit and we could teach you for free, the government prefers us to charge you rather than for it to give us all the money. So I'm afraid there are fees. For a home student, that's within the UK, it's just over £18,000. So there is a reduction on that for some students, particularly if you are a Queen Mary graduate. There is a reduction on that if you did your undergraduate law with us. For overseas students, it's £29,950. I'm aware that's quite a lot, although we are very competitive against certainly equivalent programs in the US. So there is that. There are further advices for EU students on the website, because there's been a lot of confusion post-Brexit, or as we called it in Ireland, the stupidity. That has changed things for EU students coming to us. But please do look at the website and clarify the position on that. Otherwise, again, if you look at the relevant programs on our website, you'll find more information about fees. There are, on the plus side, a number of opportunities available for funding. So there are all sorts of scholarships. Some are full scholarships, some are part-time. If you are a student who fall into the first group, the Global Talent Scholars, if you have a first-class honors degree from within the US, from the UK rather, sorry, or equivalent, you can apply for a reduction in your fees because we're saying, well done, you're very clever. Come in. We'd like to have you here. So do look into that if you've done particularly well in your undergrad. The other scholarships and various programs offer, some of them offer a part scholarship, others offer a bit more than that. They will all be potentially very useful to you. Do please have a look at that and bear in mind that I think almost all of these now require that if you're going to apply, you be an offer holder. So if you're still in the position where you're mulling over an offer, get your application in first if you feel you want to apply for one of these, because as with anything else, the earlier you apply, the better. And we do provide a number of sort of advice and counselling services that can help direct you to suitable programs. Now, the beyond the LLM, because this is the reality. I remember coming out of my undergraduate degree and thinking, what do I do? I did a degree in law. I suppose I'd better become a lawyer, and I didn't like it. I was a trainee solicitor in Belfast for a month, and then I ran away to do my LLM. Now, I had a very serendipitous experience because I did quite well in my LLM, and it was my tutor who steered me towards a career in academia. And that happens. We do often nudge students. I've taken on a new PhD student this year who was one of my previous LLM students who I had sort of encouraged to apply because she was so good and said, look, you really should think about this. And she did, yay. But the LLM from Queen Mary, aside from the personal satisfaction you will have in studying this and the development you will have and all those experiences that you will get outside the classroom and with your peers and the friendships for life and all that kind of added value stuff, we do have a very high rate of employment for all our students finding jobs within 6 months of graduating from the LLM. Now, a lot of that is students who are taking the benefit of a number of things we offer during the LLM while you're with us. So we will, there'll be regular things like writing a CV, interview workshops, all sorts of things like that can really help. We do also offer post-qualification support for a set period. That's worth thinking about. And our students do a lot more than just becoming lawyers, which is great. A number of you may even already be lawyers. You'll find in any class at CCLS, about half might be students not long out of undergraduate, about half will have worked for 5, maybe 10 years in order and then come to us to specialize, to develop their career. But a lot of students also do in-house work. I've had students go into working in the press. One of my former students was worked in as a data protection officer at Guardian Legal, the newspaper. Another one worked for Sky, the media organization in Munich for several years as their second in command for data protection, and she came back to the UK to take up a contract with a firm here, and so it goes. A lot of our students have ended up working for the World Bank, for WIPO, all sorts of things, and a lot of them do come back to do their PhD and go on into academia. Some of them even stay with us. I can think off the top of my head of at least 6 of my colleagues who did their PhD with us. So there is that. That's the only warning I have about CCLS, really. Sometimes it's hard to get out alive. Now, we do also have dedicated, there's Julia, top left-hand picture. That's my colleague, Julia. We do have a number of alumni events over the years. We love it when students stay in touch with us and tell us what they've gone on to. I have students from 10, 12 years ago who I'm still regularly in touch with and have coffee with when they're in town. And, as well as staying in touch with us on an individual level, we have an extensive alumni network we pride ourselves in. You'll have access to that. You can join alumni chapters all over the world. I mean, there's some of our locations represented with the flags here where we have these alumni chapters. So it's a really vibrant network. If you, as a lawyer, need advice on the law in another country, there are high chances somebody from your cohort of the LLM will be able to help you via this network. And we just in June, we opened the Beijing chapter of our alumni network. I was there for that event, and that's tremendous fun. Uh, there are also all sorts of events that we run, of course, post all the developments in technology like Zoom with COVID. We have events in London, and you're very welcome to come in person. We have events all over the world for students in different locations and alumni. But we also have a lot of webinars. A lot of our London events are also online and streamed. So you've got that real chance to stay connected with us as an alumnus. Number of useful links available on this particular page. Again, you'll have access to this going forward to have a look at it and see what our alumni get up to. And you know what? If you want to find out what it's really like to be a student, drop a line to one of our alumni representatives and they'll tell you quite openly what an experience they had with us. And that brings my sort of formal presentation to a close. I leave it for there. I believe I've managed to leave us some time for
A few
questions.
minutes.
Yeah,
Luckily, we've only had a few which I haven't been able to, which I've answered, and some that I've saved. So one of them though, which I think is a really key one, which I have answered, but I think it'll be helpful for everyone. Obviously, we're going to be very biased, I think, with this question. But they have said, asked, so we have to be careful about what we say. But which London University, in your professional academic opinion, has the best TMT law LLM specialism?
Queen Mary, obviously.
Exactly.
I'm not sure if anybody else actually has a specialism they market as TMT.
I'm not sure either.
I
I
think
would have
some of
to
them are
check
still
that.
calling it computer and communications and kind of tacking media law on at the end as a sort of, oh, we do a bit of that too. But I'm very confident we can compete against any of them on quality of our academics, on quality of our offerings, and we do have a number of things that are unique to us, like animal law, like what Joe Gibson does with traditional knowledge,
Mm.
or with fashion law, our new module on theatre law. I have yet to see being taught anywhere else in the UK. I'm not aware of it happening anywhere else in Europe.
Mm.
So, what we offer is good.
And those modules that this person has asked about, film law, sport entertainment, we cover them in our
Yes.
module list.
Yes.
I've
Yes.
got them on the module list, so
Sport
I've sent
is
them over.
most of our sport is Gaetano's end of things. He does esports, which is the really interesting stuff where people pay a lot of money to go and sit in Wembley Stadium and watch two guys play computer games. And believe it or not, that is a big money industry now. And lots of really interesting
Mm.
legal regulation around that.
Okay, so last couple of questions. One that I think I can just answer quickly. So, out of 180 credits, how many modules require a dissertation in the TMT? So, your dissertation isn't kind of for each module, it's 30 credits of your 180 credits. So, it'll be separate to
Yeah.
the modules.
Yeah. And the
Um,
modules have individually have their own assessments, and that varies. Some of them, it's an essay. Some of them will require you to do a timed online exam. We have a small number of modules that have a traditional in-person exam. So, and all of those things will be made very clear in the LLM handbook. You're not, it's a good idea to have a look at the information and think about what modules you might be interested before you arrive with us. But you do have induction and the first week of term to select your modules finally when you've come here and you've had a chance to meet the staff and see who you think you find interesting to listen to, and that sort of thing. So, you'll have a lot of information to make a decision on.
Absolutely. So last couple of ones and then we'll finish up. So I'm going to hold the ones here. Any further ones I will, but you can get in touch with me directly and I'll answer them.
Absolutely. And any questions
Um,
about TMT, feel free to drop me a line. My email's on the website. I'm not hard to find.
So, Rebecca, your question about the kind of hour commitment study for a part-time student. So, how it works between full-time to part-time in comparison is part-time students will still do the same kind of timing that our full-time students do in terms of they would do the lectures. You'd be in the lecture with a full-time student that's also chosen that module. How it works in terms of part-time is you're just halving that in the year, so it would be across 2 years. So this would depend on the modules that you choose as well. But we would say half of your time would be, so say obviously 12 hours of contact time, it would be 6 hours for a part-time. But this depends on the modules that you choose, depending on where that lands in the timetable. And that kind of leads on to someone's asked about how many modules you're allowed to do. You need to fit them into your 180 credits. So you have 30 credits and 15 credit modules, and it's up to you to do the maths to work that out. We do advise that students manage it so that it's balanced across the different semesters, so you're not heavily weighted on one, because you wouldn't be able to manage that anyway for the time that you need to dedicate to studying for the modules. But also timetable clashes, it's kind of up to you when it comes to the induction, to choose them accordingly, against your interests, and also how you can manage your time effectively. However, as Gavin said, in induction you have a whole 2 weeks of everyone helping you and advising, and you have enough support there so you can make the right decisions in that.
Make friends with our admin team because you know, one of the jewels in CCLS's crown, and this doesn't get said enough, frankly, by the institution, is the admin staff are absolutely fantastic. You will not find any other University of London college where the admin staff are as accessible, as friendly, as helpful as they are at CCLS, and you will see a lot of them across the course of your program. So be good to them
Totally.
because they will be very good to you.
And lastly, someone's asked about the modules running in each block. So you can actually have a look on the website at the moment on the program page. There's a draft timetable, and you can see for this year that's running at the moment what modules are running in each semester to give you an idea. It might change slightly when it comes to September, but that can give you a bit of an idea. Okay, I'm going to hold it there because we've gone slightly over time. Um, Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and for listening today. Thank you, Gavin. It's always nice to have you and have all the additional anecdotes that come with your lovely presentations. Always makes it nice and interesting. So thank you so much for your time. Very
Welcome.
much appreciated. This has been recorded, so will be shared if you want to come back to it at all. And if you have any questions at all, please do feel free to get in touch. And everyone has my email address anyway from this. So I hope it's been helpful for you today. Any questions about TMT, or admissions, or anything about studying at Queen Mary, please do let us know. And I wish you all a lovely rest of your day. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks,
Thanks,
Gavin.
Bill.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.